But that's very different to hearing doctors standing up at rallies saying the service will never be provided in their hospital, because you know what, it's not their hospital, it's our hospital, and it's a hospital for the women of Ireland.
Last year, the Irish public voted overwhelmingly to repeal the 8th Amendment and lift Ireland's historic ban on abortion, in the hope that no woman would ever have to travel for reproductive healthcare ever again. But even now, a year on from repeal, and 6 months on from Ireland legalising abortion for the first time ever, women experiencing crisis pregnancies in some parts of the country might still need to travel to access a safe and legal termination. Joe has seen documents which reveal that the Irish government is worried that women who need abortions will have to travel from Donegal to Dublin because of the high number of hospitals which can't or won't offer terminations. That means that these women, who are already between 9 and 12 weeks pregnant, might miss the legal limit for abortions in Ireland altogether and face having to leave the country. The HSE has repeatedly told the government that 7 of Ireland's 19 maternity hospitals still aren't in a position to provide abortion services, mainly because of a lack of resources. In another 2 hospitals, Wexford and Letterkenny, all of the obstetricians who work there have said that they are morally opposed to abortion, which means they can conscientiously object to having to provide it. When I met Simon Harris on Tuesday, I expected the Health Minister to say, as he always has, that these individual doctors have a right to object to providing abortion services. He reiterated that, but then he went further, criticising the comments of a doctor at an anti-abortion rally earlier this month.
Would the politicians who so vehemently insist that we must perform abortions be willing to carry out one themselves? I suspect not. But they want us, and they want to force doctors like me to do so, and that's not going to happen.
In some hospitals, conscientious objection has actually become obstruction, whereby people are, in a very small number, and I don't want to over-egg this, but in a very small number, I do believe there are some doctors in our hospital who are gone beyond their own conscientious objection to actually trying to obstruct the establishment of a service. And that's not on. I'm not going to tolerate it, the HSE is not going to tolerate it, and the government's not going to tolerate it either. So any doctor has the right to opt out. But that's very different to hearing doctors standing up at rallies saying the service will never be provided in their hospital, because you know what, it's not their hospital, it's our hospital, and it's a hospital for the women of Ireland. When contacted by Joe, Mr Hayes said he was not prepared to comment at this stage. And the Health Minister told me that he might be able to force the HSE to hire specific staff to make sure abortion is available in every part of Ireland. I do obviously have powers to direct the HSE to provide services as well, and that's certainly an option that I'm going to keep available, that if we can't have services provided through the natural way of asking people to provide them in certain parts of the country, that we could actually put in a direct HSE staffing resource into that part of the country. So I'd rather not do that. I'd rather continue to win the argument that our healthcare professionals would respect the will of the Irish people through their vote, but that is certainly an option. A spokeswoman for the Ireland East Hospital Group sent Joe the following statement.
St Luke's General Hospital Carlow Kilkenny is not in a position to comment on the personal views or activities of individual staff members. However, with regard to the provision of termination of pregnancy services, as previously stated by the Department of Health, conscientious objection is limited to persons involved in the delivery of the treatment only and does not extend to institutions.
Simon Harris sat down with the HSE in May, and he warned the health service that he couldn't stand over a situation where abortion isn't available in every part of Ireland.
A woman should be able to have a termination at her local maternity hospital if that is what she wants. Therefore, I cannot stand over a situation where women have to travel long distances, for example from Donegal to Dublin, to get a termination.
Before Ireland changed its abortion law last year, anti-abortion activists and anti-abortion politicians warned the government that some hospitals would refuse to provide abortion services.
I spoke to an obstetrician last night, and that obstetrician told me that Peter Boylan is doing a tour currently of a number of hospitals in the country, that he has met with hospitals in Kilkenny, in Letterkenny, and I just don't have the last one, in Cavan, and that medical professionals in those hospitals have met already prior and said they're not participating in the government's process with regards to provision of abortions.
Simon Harris has admitted now that people like Peadar Tóibín were right. The anti-abortion TD told me this week that he believes Simon Harris is trying to force all 19 maternity hospitals to provide abortion services because it suits the Health Minister's political career.
Yeah, well, the Minister was determined to push this new service through the health service, through the hospital service, and he was also determined to do it in a particular timeline, I believe for political reasons. You know, I understood at the time, and I think many people understood at the time, that neither were practical. That, you know, many people within the health service had worked all their lives to protect lives, and for the first time they were being asked by legislation to end lives. And, you know, conscientious objection is an international norm. People are allowed to conscientious object in such a serious situation. So it was obvious in Ireland that many health professionals would conscientiously object in this scenario.
Warnings about the Irish Health Service not being ready didn't just come from those on the anti-abortion side of the debate. Pro-choice TDs and medical professionals were also worried that the government was rushing to have abortion available by January 1st.
I think the legislation was rushed. I think legislators like myself were put under tremendous pressure by organisations like the National Women's Council and others who wrote to us and said, we know that the legislation is not perfect, but just get it through. Actually, what we should have been doing is spending time ensuring that the resources were in place. So the Minister was rushing for the deadline of the 1st of January, as he always is, for a soundbite and a photo op and all that goes along with it. But what he didn't do was do his homework in terms of the resources.
The vast majority of women who are accessing legal abortions in Ireland at the moment are doing so through pills that they get from their local GP. But if you're between 9 and 12 weeks pregnant, you have to go to a hospital to access an abortion. Documents released to JOE, and also reported by the JOE.ie earlier this week, show the number of hospitals where abortion services still aren't available. For any woman living north of Castlebar, there is no hospital providing abortion services. The HSE originally predicted that 14 hospitals would be providing abortion services from January. 6 months later, it's still only 10. While more hospitals are expected to provide terminations before the end of the year, the government is still way off its promise to have legal abortions available in all 19 of Ireland's maternity units. More than a year later, the referendum is over and the 8th Amendment is gone. But it seems that the debate over Ireland's abortion laws is still raging among our doctors and in our hospitals.